Hi, you guys. Welcome back. I am going to give it a second because we'll wait for people to come in, for notices to go out. And, I see you're over here too, Haggis. Let me put this on mute. That way we don't echo. Echo, echo, echo. Okay, we're off from that one. Here I am. Hi, Kathy. Hey, Ganja. Hey, Haggis. How are you guys tonight? Well, I'm kind of excited about this, you guys. So hopefully this will get out. I still am not done writing my. Hey, Cajun. Hello. Still not done with my stuff for Tony Ortega, but I'll get there. Hey, Eyes to See. Hello. I am so happy it's Friday. I'm ready for the weekend. Who knows? Almost off the road. Woohoo, good. You know what? Sorry. Sorry, let me send that email real quick because we have a surprise guest. Where did I find that at? Here we go. Let's make that little. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, Scooter Mom. I was going to be by myself. No, I wish it was a Russell Crowe. Hey, Melody. I told her that she can stop by if she wanted to stop by, and she's going to stop by. So she's going to help me. We'll wait for her to pop in, and then we'll get started. Exciting things are moving ahead. Yes, they are. Okay, Ganja Girl, that's very cool. Thank you for just listening. And you can always do replay if you need to. I hate it when you think you did something and you thought you did, and then all of a sudden you go, oh shoot, I didn't. That really sucks when that happens. Oh, goodness sakes. I'm just 2 steps behind myself. There she is. Hello, Miss Violet.
Oh, I forgot to turn the thing on sideways. Oh, sorry about that. I was like, wait a minute, I couldn't find it.
Hey, Amy. Yeah, I thought I had sent you the link, and I didn't. So sorry about that.
It's okay. I was scooting down here because I decided I got booted out. So I'm down here trying to. It's beautiful and sunny anyway. I need some fresh air, so I was kicked out to get some fresh air.
I was watching Dan walks, and streets happened to come by there, and they were all sweating to death. They said it was like 90 degrees.
Yeah, there's a heat advisory, which I have a sweater on still. I love it. I'm so happy with it. I wonder if I could just switch it.
That's the way I've been all day too. I've had a blanket over me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm almost always cold. It's rare like this. Like I said, it is. I can feel it's hot, but I don't feel hot. I'm
So,
still have a sweater.
what is your timing, Audit? How long can you be with us?
Right now I'm good. I don't know. Probably no later than 6:30 because that's what I Okay,
Okay.
but I should probably maybe wrap up like 10 minutes early, so I don't have to just
Okay.
jump
We'll be good,
from
I
work
think.
further. Okay.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome, Audit. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it because
Thank you
it
for having
always,
me. And hi,
always
chat. And
bounces.
like I said, I can't see chat, but
That's okay. We
hello.
have Amy and Melody and Kathy and Haggis and
The crew.
Eyes to See, Cajun Juju, Ganja, and Old Frizz. Hello, Old Frizz. Welcome back. Kathy Scoggins. And we have a crew.
Awesome. Hi,
Let's
guys.
let's be respectful of your time so that way we don't lose you. I'm going to go ahead and get started on two cases, one civil, one criminal, that we're going to discuss tonight. And I'm really happy to present them to you. I want to go a little bit backwards. I know a lot of you were there last night when we were talking about the Q&A, but I also want to talk about, for anybody who isn't here or anybody on the replay that may not understand everything we're talking about. So the first claim is civil. And also, if you have a question, please type question or comment so that way I know. I'm going to be not looking at the chat while I'm reading this because I can't see it on that end. And that way I can go back through. And I'll look for questions as we go page by page. This isn't really that long. First claim is civil, second's criminal. The civil versus criminal, one for each of you. The civil and the criminal cases differ in their purpose, who initiates the case, the burden of proof, and the possible outcomes. Civil cases resolve disputes between individuals or entities, while criminal cases involve alleged violations of laws by individuals and are brought by the state or the city. In civil cases, the burden of proof is on the plaintiff, on the complainant, and requires a preponderance of evidence, which means more evidence than not. While in criminal cases, the burden of proof is on the prosecution, and it requires the proof to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil cases typically result in monetary damages or orders for specific actions, while criminal cases can result in fines, imprisonment, or other penalties. Do you want to add anything to that, Audit?
Sounds good. I mean, right, it could be injunctions or whatever. Like you can go to court and ask for, it doesn't always have to be money. It could be asked for change or something that be done. I think that's a good distinction too.
Right. The first one that we're going to look at is the civil case. And a civil case, as I said, is one where you're looking for it to be I just kind of screwed up totally on my words. Whatever. Okay, it's based on the same concept as the sexual abuse civil case claim we did and talked about yesterday. And this one will also be a coordinated civil case. And I went ahead and put the definition of that since they gave it to me last night, is that the multiple lawsuits with shared common questions of law or fact, and they're grouped together for management by a single judge, and usually in a different location than the original filings. This process is also known as Judicial Council Coordinated Proceedings, JCCP, and it aims to streamline the litigation by avoiding duplication and potential inconsistency across multiple cases. And are there any questions about that? I know we covered that last night, but if you have any questions, these victims are not under arbitration, Cajun Juju, for this civil case. This civil case is mostly for people that have civil rights issues. So civil rights issues, let me go on and you'll understand, okay? So the process is the same as the sexual abuse civil case. An original claim was introduced, and now we are at the initial investigatory stage. That means introducing a few select cases for review. Remember, each case is based on its own evidence and merit. Nothing is joined, and each is independent. That would mean that if audit had a civil rights case and I had a civil rights case, we would be both on our own line, our own trajectory for our own results, and the coordination process happens in the judicial process. So Kimberly from Andrews and Thornton recommended a very competent attorney firm that specializes in civil rights. The attorneys have argued in front of the Supreme Court, and the lead for us is a cult survivor. So they're very competent in what we're dealing with and very competent in what they do. And I'm not going to disclose the firm's name in this live. However, if you're selected as an initial case to present, I will formally introduce you, a one-on-one introduction. Oops. I went too fast. So types of civil rights cases. The ones that they handle are employment discrimination, prisoners' rights, and freedom of speech and assembly. And then those are all parts of the fundamental rights that we enjoy in our Constitution: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to equal protection under the law, and the right to due process. Audit, would you like to speak to any of those?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to see if I can get where there's some light. Um, yeah, it's really important. I mean, this is going to help a lot of people possibly who are not even in Scientology, but the people who are helping Scientology, and for me, like my biggest thing was what happened to me on Easter Sunday, and not just to me, to others as well, and what's been happening all along. I think
Right.
of Henry's case. I think of DOA's case. I think of everyone who, so there's a lot of people that probably have cases, and here we have a possible, hopefully, chance at getting, like one, like everyone's individual case, but one lawyer, one judge, one trajectory, like you said, or your own trajectory, but, like this, where it's managed, I guess, an oversight, a single oversight.
Correct.
And so I think I'm excited. I'm extremely excited about this, and I'm ready to go through my interview like tomorrow.
Right.
Well,
Right.
Monday.
We'll try. We'll
I'm
try.
ready to. Yeah.
So to answer your question, Cajun, there are some people that will have signed arbitration clauses. However, for the most part, the civil rights probably aren't going to be people that were in the organization. So,
Can
Amy,
I say
yes,
something to
there
that too? Can I say something to
absolutely.
that?
I'm
Just
gonna mute you while you do that because the dog's drinking.
Okay. Just because, sorry, stupid plane. Oh, sorry, but just because there's arbitration agreements doesn't mean you shouldn't do it anyway. Because a judge has a right to say yes, you had to honor that contract and go to arbitration. But a judge actually could say, you know what? No, this is not fair. This is not relevant for this case, and no, they do not. So never let, oh, I signed arbitration get in the way of trying, because a judge can overrule that arbitration, as far as I understand. So far, it's always been a judge saying, no, you have to go back to that. But how do you know there's not going to be one judge one of these days that's going to say, you know what, no, I challenge this. So I say keep trying.
Right. And the judicial process can be coordinated to where if the judge finds that arbitration isn't necessary or appropriate or is inadequate, that would go across all the coordinated claims. So that's one of the benefits. Of course, he could say, yeah, if you have an arbitration clause, could rule that way too. But at least it's consistent.
But I'd like to interject, even if you do have the arbitration, doesn't mean if it doesn't settle correctly that you can't then come back and say, hey, this didn't work right and try again. I believe I'm just one of those people. It's like never give up. Keep trying until there's no play until you they say there's no more tries left.
Right, agreed. And Amy, yes, the amount of judgments are going to be different for different claims in different states and different cities and different jurisdictions. And yes, They do have limits. They do have caps on some, but most of the caps are in a tort claim. So a tort claim is like a class action suit because the toasters break and burns people, and so those where they come from.
And one thing about when it's a civil rights case, it's really the only chance you can almost you may be able to overcome qualified immunity for the officers, because that's one of the exceptions that they can, if they individually violated your rights intentionally and with know-how. I don't know the exact wording of it, but that is one of the, I don't know if it's the only or whatever, but I know that is an opportunity that you could overcome, because the police they're so insulated, but that's like one of the areas where they're not as insulated.
Right.
And
So Michael Andreas, I don't probably um I don't understand your question or what you're talking about. I'll have to look that up. I'm not saying it's not pertinent. I just don't know what you're referring to.
but
So
I can't see it.
yeah, it just says, I think you're talking about a lawsuit under 42 USC sections 1983. Under that statute, only a government actor such as the police can be civilly sued. And no, you can sue anybody with a civil case. So we're not talking about
But the
civilly
civil rights would
suing,
be against the government, right? Yeah, like he's talking
right?
about like the qualified, I think the immunity and the government acting in color of law and stuff like that. So,
Correct. And we're
but
talking about discrimination. So you can have a civil suit against anybody for discrimination or
But I
for,
believe it would be that it would be, see that here's a case where like like one case may fall under what he's talking about and, and
mhm,
that's their case. My case may not fall under that, it may fall under this, but it's all kind of
correct,
goes under civil rights, because I had the right to go across, through on Easter Sunday, and they prevented me. So no, it wasn't the government doing it, so I may not be able to go under that statute, but they still are not allowed to violate the law either. And so that's a claim in and of itself. So they would have to. Here's where they have to figure out who has what and what this and that. They're not going to be one joint claim. It's everyone has whatever they've been violated on.
correct. And that would be a case by case, individual basis, depending on your merits of your case, the evidence of your case, and the facts. So each case would be different. They're only joined at the judicial level. So let me go back to my paper here. Those are the types of civil rights and the fundamental rights that we're dealing with.
And
Um,
there's quite a few people in our group, not our group, but who fall in that, like frivolous prosecution, and if anything like that, there's false
Absolutely.
arrest, that's the government, and
Yep.
even me, I had the police saying, enforcing uh, illegally enforcing these permits. There's a lot of government questions here that need to be addressed, but also privately, you can go against Scientology for also violating the law. It may
Correct.
just be worded differently.
The difference, the thing we run against here is the statute of limitations, and it varies state to state, and definitely the federal statute of limitations for civil rights is different. Personal injury statute of limitations is 2 years. So generally, that's what we're going to use right now for the initial claims. There may be others that extend past that. Um, but for the initial claims, we're going to use 2 years. So, example I'm going to give is protesters being wrongly detained against or arrested or prosecuted, activists' First Amendment rights being violated, barring access to public areas, discrimination or exclusion based on race, religion, etc., or being kicked out because of your sexual orientation. One example that I had thought of was that gentleman named Chance. The one, he was kicked out because they saw that he was gay and was on Tinder. and they kicked him out of and left him high and dry on the side of the sidewalk. So that is a civil rights violation, and he could become part of the suit. Um, the other, some prior violations. I'm sorry, the dog's drinking again. I do apologize. Um, that could still be within reach. And unlawful detainment, false imprisonment, thinking RPF, improper education, and forced labor. We're going to talk about more with forced labor, but it also runs into the civil rights realm. But those are longer statute of limitations. And the reason why I'm opening this up is because I have um, looked at it, and there's quite a few of them, the ones that you had just talked about. But Josiah's case, Michael's
Yep.
case, Audit, Henry,
Yep.
Danny,
Dan, yes.
Cam,
Mm-hmm.
Erica from Florida, Aaron from Florida, Nancy Drew,
Yep.
Chance, the one I was just talking about, and Scott. Those are all people that within the last year this has happened to. Now, thinking of it like with Scott,
Uh-oh.
or excuse me, with Aaron, I'll give you a chance here just a second.
Selfless self
He
too, right?
to
No,
sue. Yep, Selfless and Pearl,
Pearl snubbing. Yep.
and yep, they would fit under this. And those are all people that had undue processes and persecution, and civil could have civil rights claims. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but what would it hurt for you to talk to the civil rights team to see if you would fall into the categories? Now, like with Aaron, he did have it for him to sue the city or LAPD over it. I think he would have had to have filed the intent to sue like within 6 months.
Yeah.
But I know when I was speaking with the civil rights team, they said, yes, that is the case for suing the LAPD. However, there's ways to get around that because of civil rights issues.
Mm.
And so it wouldn't hurt for him to call and be interviewed to see if it would be within the purview or within the time frame, or whether he could just be a witness to associate pattern. So, Audit, do you have anything more on that one?
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, like a lot of times what's interesting with the law is that, yeah, everything people give up so quickly because they're like, oh, it says this, the statute of limitations is this. But there's so many exceptions or so many, different, this really I say just let the attorney, because they know all the different laws, all the different rules of everything, and just give it even if you think it's an older case, say, oh, it's 5 years ago. It doesn't hurt to talk to them and just say, well, you know what, there's this exception, or that you could be a witness and just something. I
Right,
just say it doesn't hurt to try.
right. And what we're at the stage, we're a step before where the sexual abuse, sexual assault claim is. So right now, I'm looking for a few souls to raise their hands. Yep, Audit's one of them.
Yes.
And I have one that we already started the claim with, and I would never divulge the information on that. But yep, so there's different people. If you want to give them my email, I will do a formal introduction to get you in to do an initial interview, and then we'll be at the step where we are with the sexual abuse cases now after that. So as I said, we're a step behind, but I thought I'd bring the rest of you in on the process because this is a very daunting process and slow, and it takes forever. So let me go back and see if there's any more questions on this before we move to the next case.
I have a question
Okay, shoot.
for the lawyer. I really, because I've been doing with the cure and corrects with the Brown Act violations. That's against civil your basically your rights as well. And I'm wondering if those things could be, if they would be willing to look at that to see if they are changing because it's with Public Works, everything changed after we started coming to the meetings. Before then, they didn't change until we were just consistently coming. And it was changed to where it's still a Brown Act violation, I believe. And like, so I'm just curious if maybe they would entertain that as well and fix that,
Yeah.
even just as an injunction, not as a monetary.
Yeah.
Just a
Well, let's
question.
put it in there. Let's ask them.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay. Let's move to the next one. The next one's a little more exciting. Woohoo! Get my
Well, that was
excitement.
exciting enough. I don't know. I'm pretty excited.
That's
I'm actually
so.
really excited you know why I'm excited? I'm excited for yesterday with the victims, and well, survivor. I'm gonna call them survivors of Scientology, that they, have an avenue. But I'm really excited now that an avenue is opening up for those the never ends, but who are the boots on the ground that are, showing up and doing that, who are there and who are having their rights violated and putting themselves at risk, getting arrested, getting at gunpoint, all these things. So I'm really, really excited for this
Yeah,
second part as well.
I agree. And it shows pattern and precedence. And in all of these cases, as I was talking earlier on the sunshines and before, is that all of these cases roll up to a bigger picture. And eventually there will be more consequence to all of these cases that are happening and all of these patterns and all of this precedence that's being shown. So that's the bigger picture, is having results, having justice, and getting the change that we all seek. And that's something that we all have, and we're all shared with that vision, is having change.
Yes,
So let me go to the next one because then I'm going to read. So I'm going to
that'd be priceless.
switch to the federal claim. And this claim will involve the FBI, the Department of Labor, and Homeland Security, but it's going to start with the FBI. This is a federal criminal case. This is the difference between the civil and the criminal. That was civil. This is criminal. This is where somebody goes to jail or gets fined. They pay big bucks. This is where they go to jail. This case was adjudicated. The perps convicted and now sentenced. So let's look at the UNOI, the United Nations of Islam case. It started back in 2019. It's based on a labor violations claim that brought in additional abuse charges. The Trojan horse literally was the violation of the labor laws, in specific forced labor. So I'm going to stop, watch out for the big faces here. Let me go to surprise. I am going to go to this article and I'm going to have to share it. Yes, I know. My other one just automatically switches on me, and this one does not. Okay. And there is a link for this one and the next article. I'm not going to read the next article, but there are links in the description. Let me come back here. So this is from the Department of Justice's website direct. This was a federal case. 6 members of a former cult convicted of forced labor conspiracy charges in years-long scheme that included multiple minors. Following a 26-day trial, a jury in Kansas convicted Mr. Mahid, I'm not going to read all these names, of conspiracy to commit forced labor. The jury additionally convicted Mr. Mahid of 5 counts of forced labor. 2 other co-defendants pled guilty to conspiracy to commit forced labor. According to the evidence presented in court during the course of the trial, the defendants were all former high-ranking members of the United Nations of Islam, or were wives of UNOI founder Royal Jenkins. The UNOI and these defendants held themselves out as a beacon of hope for the community, promising to educate and teach important life skills to members, particularly children. I'm going to forewarn you, look how parallel this is to Scientology, said the Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. Instead, the defendants betrayed this trust, exploiting young children in the organization by callously compelling their labor. Prosecuting this case is a testament to the Justice Department's unwavering commitment to hold human traffickers accountable. The Justice Department will continue to vigorously investigate and prosecute parasitic criminals who target vulnerable victims to finance their lifestyles. The bravery shown by victims of the United Nations of Islam is inspiring because they spoke up about their heinous atrocities committed against them as vulnerable children, said U.S. Attorney Kate E. Brubacher for the District of Kansas. In childhood, they suffered physical and emotional abuse, were denied a proper education, and were subject to forced labor. As adults, these victims found the strength and courage to pursue justice and face their abusers. When I read this, I truly, truly see Lara. I mean, just boom, right in front of my face.
Yeah.
Under the guise of false pretenses and coercion, these victims, some of whom were as young as 8 years old, endured inhumane and aberrant conditions. The FBI said the FBI field office. Today's convictions should serve as a stark warning that forced labor will not be tolerated by the FBI. Unoi principles included many rules that members had to follow. They required duty or unpaid labor and emphasized the negative eternal religious consequences of noncompliance. UNOI operated businesses in various cities around the United States: Kansas City, New York, Newark, Cincinnati, Dayton, and Atlanta, among other locations. In their former leadership roles in UNOI, the defendants agreed to compel the labor and services over a dozen victims, including multiple minors, some of whom were as young as 8 years old. Listen to the date, between October 2000 and November 2012. So this goes back to 2000. Statute of limitations for this act is 2000. The victims worked in the UNOI owned and operated restaurants, bakeries, gas stations, the laboratory, and a clothing and sewing factory, up to 16 hours a day. The victims also provided childcare and domestic services inside the defendants' homes. None of the victims were ever compensated for the years of work they performed in the businesses or at the behest of the defendants. The victims all lived in deplorable conditions in overcrowded facilities, often overrun with mold, mice, and rats. In contrast, the defendants and their immediate families lived comfortably. The evidence presented in court demonstrated that the defendants used a variety of coercive tactics to compel the victims' labor and services. In essence, the defendants effectively controlled the victims by manipulating, they could have used easier words, UNOI rules originally created by the founder. Sound familiar? First, the defendants separated the minor victims from their parents and their support network. They enticed the parents to send their children to Kansas by promising an education and development of life skills through the work at UNOI businesses. However, these promises were false. The minors did not receive an education from an accredited and licensed school, but instead worked excessive hours for UNOI's financial benefit. UNOI's unlicensed and unaccredited school, or quote-unquote university, was little more than a vehicle for extracting unpaid labor and publicly humiliating victims who violated one of the many rules. Second, the defendants controlled 1, what the victims viewed and read; 2, how the victims dressed; 3, how the victims addressed the defendants and others; 4, with whom the victims communicated; 5, where the victims went, 6, what the victims ate, to ensure that the victims, particularly the females, maintained a certain weight. The defendants restricted and monitored the victims' communications with their families, thinking of Jenna here, members of the opposite sex, and others. The defendants required some victims to undergo colonics. I won't describe what that is, but that was to keep them clean. And at the same time, the defendants rarely permitted victims to receive outside medical attention for illnesses or injuries. Uh, you could just put Scientology in every single one of those sentences, right? This
Except for
is
it'd be
just,
pure rundown instead of a colonic.
yeah, this is ridiculous. So, third,
Mm-hmm.
the defendants regularly punished the victims for violating the rules. The defendants withheld food, prohibited victims from speaking to others for over 2 weeks, locked them in a dark, frightening basement, imposed extra work, and beat them, sometimes in front of others to create a climate of fear and intimidation. Overboarding. The defendants even held one victim upside down over train tracks because he would not admit to stealing food when he was hungry. Another victim drank water from a toilet because she was so thirsty after not being permitted to drink. Finally, the defendants instilled a fear of noncompliance and leaving the unoi by depriving victims of any education or development of life skills. The defendants also told victims they would burn in eternal hellfire if they left. Okay, that's maybe one difference.
No, I think they kind of, not hellfire, but I think they do use that you're going to hurt your eternal salvation and the
Oh, that's
salvation
true.
and the
That's true.
salvation of the planet.
And family members who remained at UNOI were required to shun as detractors any victim who left, and the UNOI claimed credit for any negative consequence. So sentencing hearings happened in February. They did happen. They were sentenced. What do you guys think? What do you think of that article?
I think it's amazing. To me, it sounds like this, or well, we know that the regular Nation of Islam does have a lot of connection to, and I know this is not that same organization, kind of like an offshoot, if I understand it correctly, but it sounds like they learned all their tricks from Scientology, like, and they studied Scientology and how they do things, and then did it for their cult, and that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah,
And
it sure does.
the other thing to me that stands out is that it looks like here's a case. In this case, it sounds like everything else. It's they can sue an organization. You're suing Scientology, and so Scientology is not a person, right? But with criminal cases, it has to be against people, not organizations. So this sounds like this is something that would go after actual people.
This is putting David Miscavige in jail. This is
And
putting the
Kirsten
leader of
Peterson,
RTC in jail, the
Moxon.
CSMs. Yep, that's who it is.
Mhm.
Old Fritz just had a comment. This is gross. The victims we know from YouTube would have suffered before 2000. No, sorry. Let's use Lara for an example. Sorry, Lara, if you're on here. She didn't leave till after, I think, 2004, 2005, maybe even later. And she was only 14 in the year 2000. Lara was a
Yeah.
child for this.
This is 25 years ago. So I think there's a lot of people that left within 25 years. So they're all going to be good.
They're all,
The
yeah,
vast
they're all
majority.
right in there. So not
Even
many
if it's
people
one
left.
day into the year, if they left in 2000, you're good.
That's right. So old Fritz, yeah, this is right in. Everybody that was, especially in the Sea Org, if you didn't leave till after 2000, this is you. This is you that can claim this.
This is
Yeah,
outstanding. And the fact here we have a case precedence. That's a lot of what we've been struggling with, is that there's not a lot of cases of precedence. They keep sending them back to arbitration. We're not getting the convictions. But
right.
here, okay, it's not a conviction against Scientology, but you cannot, they will absolutely be able to show the comparisons and the correlations, so that how that, if it fits for them, it definitely, I would say, fits. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be, but I can't see how that wouldn't count. And so it's exciting that there's actual precedents now.
Yeah, almost definitely. Sorry, big face. Okay, so let
In
me
the
go
dark, I
back
don't know why
to
it's still light out.
go back to my presentation here. So when we're looking, let me read to you. I can hear the
Hey, let
planes
me.
going over. That's okay. So let me read to you what they consider, they meaning the feds, consider what forced labor is. So forced labor, did that go through? It did. Okay. So forced labor, sometimes also referred to as labor trafficking, encompasses the range of activities involved when a person uses force, fraud, or coercion to exploit the labor services of another person. The term forced child labor describes forced labor schemes in which the traffickers compel children to work. Traffickers often target children because they are more vulnerable, although some children may legally engage in certain forms of work. Forcing or coercing children to work remains and is illegal. Flat out illegal. If you force or coerce a child to work, especially before the age of 14, it is illegal federally. Some indicators of forced labor of a child include situations in which the child appears to be in the custody of a non-family member and the child's work financially benefits someone outside the child's family, or the denial of food, rest, or schooling to a child who is working. So after reviewing this UNOI case, as I said, this is my fourth time presenting this, but after these other two cases came up, I thought, nope, we're going to redo this one. This is a case that we need to get out, we need to do. So I called the Kansas field office and tried to talk to an agent, and it took quite a bit of tenacity and bulldogness to finally get to talk to an agent. And they gave me this process. I'm going to show you the process. This is the process I wish that you would show far and wide. If you are wanting to do a claim, first of all, review the UNOI claim. I've linked both of these down into the description so that way you can read through them. Again, the other one, the Kansas Reflector article, talks more about how it talks about the abuses, but it also talks about how the city was at fault and the city was culpable of creating this mess because they let them. Achoo, Clearwater and LA, you're on the line here. And they got away with it because then they ponied up and said, okay, we'll testify in this, especially with their CPS and stuff. But Clearwater, this is going to be you. So that's a really good article. Both of them are linked. The second process, were you a victim after 2000 of forced labor violations? Was it coerced? Under or over the age 18 doesn't matter. However, minors are more egregious and hold more weight. So if you were under 18 after 2000 and you were forced into labor, that's huge. That's a huge, huge thing. You are protected under TVPA, the Traffic Victims Protection Act. The Traffic Victims Protection Act is a federal law that covers the protection of labor and sex trafficking. And sex trafficking is part of this. I did not put this in here, but folks such as Serge was sex trafficked. And he would be covered under this, not only for the labor, but for the sex trafficking also. So Print a copy of that first one, the one from the Department of Justice. You can make an appointment and walk into a FBI field office. I've given you a link for all the field offices. You can file online or you can call the national hotline. All of those numbers are on the description. You can file a claim 24/7 online. You walk in and you say, I want to report a crime. Give them a copy of that Department of Justice article. Tell them that it's the same, but instead, the perpetrator is Scientology. Be prepared with the W's: who, what, where, and when. You don't have to be 100%. Just complete as much as you can, and you can either fill in the information later during the investigation, or you can find evidence as you go through, as it progresses. The officer will then either talk to you, interview you then, or they will call you with a follow-up. That is the process. What's so important about this? What's so important about reporting? Audit, I'm going to let you take that one.
Why is it important? Well, hey, with no victim, no crime is number one. I mean, and this is criminal. So criminal is beyond a reasonable doubt. So it is that higher threshold. And so they're going to be, and it's the government. It's not like a private lawyer is going to be holding your hand through this. This is, probably a little bit, it's the government. But at the same time, they are working on this stuff right now. Human trafficking is it's a huge problem, and the government seems very motivated to counter it right now. You're hearing a lot of these situations, and arrests being made for this and that. So for me, it's really a hot time to get in on this, if you've been trafficked in any way. But because it seems like right now the ears are open, there's an interest, and you just have to do it. And can I say something else too with this? Like,
Absolutely.
besides the people who are survivors, I don't know. I have a vision of like Matt, who's very so compassionate, going down there and and letting them know that we care. And like I just see that. Like I would love to see the guy that's vacuuming L. Ron Hubbard way, and and the people, you can tell they're in the RPF, and just that to say, hey, there is help, there's a way out, and like getting this information to the
Mhm.
people who are being labor trafficked right now inside those walls. Like I would love to get this to them too, to where I don't know, slip them a phone, and we give the Aftermath Foundation number, but or as any whatever numbers we give, maybe there's a number we can give, and like kind of like let them know you can call here for help or something like that,
Mhm.
because I would love this to get to the people inside those walls right now as well as survivors.
Yeah, it absolutely. And we know when there's one complaint and one um, case that's presented, it gets swept under the rug so easy because it's the one off. Because, oh no, we didn't do that. We wouldn't ever do that. But like with this other claim, the UNOI claim, 12 of them, okay, that's only 12. How many do we have in Scientology? Hundreds and hundreds. But 12 of them showed enough to make it a RICO claim, to make it national, make it federal, have Homeland Security, Department of Labor, and FBI all involved. 12 claims. You could do that with your eyes closed because Scientology sucks so bad
Mm.
with the labor violations that they've done. So this is really important to get this going. These are criminal charges. This is somebody's going to jail. This is somebody's going to jail for a while.
Can I say something else? There's also right now, because we know we have that there's a civil RICO case going on right now. And so can you imagine if they're defending themselves in a civil RICO type of case, and then there you have criminal RICO type case, that really could burst the doors wide open. And it would probably mutually help the other case, I would think, so really is time to do it at the same time as that is going on.
It is. And I've been reminded a few times by Miriam Francis. Mona, baby steps. You've got to remember this is baby steps. This is hard. This is scary, and their feelings are valid. And I'm going to just remind you that these are baby steps. So you think of it, yes, I was labor trafficked. I had forced labor. I'm thinking of those that are survivors of the Sea Org, especially. Um, yes, I was forced labor. I was slave labor. Today I'm thinking of reporting, and tomorrow I'm going to report, and then the next day I'm going to get my stuff together. I mean, it's baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. You were abused. There was a crime committed against you. These are crimes. If you do not report, no one's ever going to know, because talking your experience to YouTube is very healing and very supportive, but it doesn't help you with the justice that you're looking for. Again, no victim, no crime.
And then can I also add too that when it's now the criminal part of it, yes, the civil, there's, the financial possibility of getting that aid, but with the criminal, there's usually a victim's compensation type of situation where if being victimized and and you are a crime victim, you may be able to get counseling or the injections or medical, the things that you're not getting now you may be able to get help. I know that sometimes people they will pay for first and last month's rent to help people move away from a situation, or so it would possibly open up a whole lot of other kind of help just being a victim for victim compensation.
True,
And and they may make Scientology pay for it all, but but regardless, there may be, so I think there's, even though it may seem scarier to be, dealing it, like the criminal and all this stuff, um, there's likely they probably have victim advocates, they have all kinds, and don't forget, you'd be able to take your lawyer if you're in the other case, a civil, the Marcy law, they can help you with criminal as well, probably for this as well, even if it's federal,
true,
I would think. So there'd be a
true.
lot of help and support.
Yep. Remember that forced labor is illegal, even if it's done in the name of a religion. And the Supreme Court affirmed that in a case called Prince versus Massachusetts. You can't force children to work. You can't force labor. You can't commit crimes under the cloak of religion. In criminal cases, here's your arbitration question again. Criminal cases cannot be arbitrated. Crimes are not arbitrated. That's a civil case. Arbitration does not happen in criminal cases. So arbitration doesn't apply here. The TVPA, the Trafficked Victims Protection Act, was amended in 2017 to allow to combine cases nationally to make them a RICO case. And then I'm going to remind you that reporting is not an us thing, it is a you thing. I wish so much that I could report for you. I wish that you could tell me your story and that I could, since I haven't been through it, I could have maybe a little more courage and I could go down there and I'd still be scared and probably pee myself because it would be scary, but I would do it for you. I would do that for you, but I can't. You have to report for yourself.
And we can
Unless you're a
support you,
child,
right, and hold your hand. And
I would go with you and hold your hand. I definitely would. But I can't say those words. You have to.
this is the chance to get real justice, which sometimes can be scary to say, well, if I'm, because it's a process. You don't just get from point A to justice, at the blink of an eye. It is a process. But I believe that every step of the way, you know, there's support. There's going to be support from, federal prosecutors that deal with these things. Like we get scared because usually it's like the first line is the police. and they can be more intimidating because their job is to really weed things out, and they're skeptical. And so I understand that's the scariest part. Once you get beyond that, it's going to get a lot easier, because then when you're dealing with the prosecutors and they deal with victims, they understand more what they're dealing with, how to to work with victims. And they will have things in place, probably likely, just sometimes there's advocates they have available. There's different things. So I think it'll get a lot less scary once you get through that first initial reporting. And yeah, they may sit there and seem kind of cold, and that's their training. Like, if you understand police training,
Mm-hmm.
they're not the cuddliest, they and but they're trying to really kind of get a feel for what's going on. If you can get through that, I believe you'll be able to get through all of it. That's just my belief. And not everything is gonna, it may get to where it's in court and there's a trial, or it may not, because they could plead to, there's plea bargains and all that stuff as well. So who knows? But I would say take one step at a time. And then once you have the case, it's the U.S. that becomes the victim. So at that point, you become a witness, really, because
Mm-hmm.
once in criminal cases, the state, the country, the city, whatever, they say they're the victim. So you're not going to have to navigate it. It's just basically, you may have to go through questioning, or you may have to testify, and there may be things in place to, like sometimes there's, you just let them know where you're at. If you're really struggling, there's sometimes they can do different things, or maybe testify through Zoom or whatever. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like, just don't stop it because of anxiety, or try to go through if you can. I'm not telling anyone what to do, but and then see what they can do, because sometimes we have assumptions. We've watched TV or we've seen a movie and we think that's how it is, and it's not always the case. And things change. Like, there's a lot of changes just in being more, I think, more victim oriented, more understand, like Marcy's law, understanding that victims are not getting enough help. And so there's a lot more of that going on right now. So I would say, and we all got your back. We're there with you, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's gonna support you, and take it at your own pace, and figure out what you need and what's right for you. But this may
Yep.
be,
All of those names that you're naming, yes, exactly. In Cajun, yes. This could shut them down just like UNOI. Yep. And it took them out of the safe pointing realm, took them out of the city. Yeah, it did.
this could lead to, I would think, if they got convicted, which, it could lead them to, because that would possibly overcome the hurdle with the IRS, about crimes against, going against policy. It is not policy to
Exactly.
be slave, runners, like slave, like labor traffickers and human traffickers. And, so that may be enough. Like, if you get the convictions, even if it's however many people, really, it only takes one, I'm sure. But, but it's better to have more than one. But that may be enough. And that's what we really want, is to get rid of that. And right now, like, the IRS they don't really have a motivation to. They're not motivated to do anything. But if it gets to the point where, like, how can they overlook that? They may just want a reason to do it.
Right. And they are. They really do want to crack down on these human trafficking and labor trafficking.
Yeah,
So
it's big right now.
I, this is a big thing. And right now is your time. Right now is your time to start taking advantage of the opportunities that are ahead of you. The UNOI case sucks. It sucks that it happened. But you know what? It set precedents. It set precedents for your claim.
Can I also mention windows of opportunity? Sometimes, because laws change every single day. Court cases can be overturned at any time. Something else can come down the pike and overturn this, but hopefully not. But the whole point is that you kind of, what they say, strike while the iron is hot. Right now, it's a hot
Mhm.
topic. This is available. This law, you can. It doesn't hurt to go check and see what they say. If the worst case scenario is that they say no, we don't think this fits, and then in that case, that would be crazy in my opinion because it's too parallel. It's too much similarities. But
As
I
Serge
mean,
says, this is the UNOI. This is on steroids.
yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I can't see how Scientology wouldn't fit in. But the whole point is that things can change in a heartbeat. The laws change every day. There's new legislation. So I'm a believer of strike while it's the iron's hot. Do it while you can. Set up if you need a safe space, you need somebody to be there with you, whatever. Set whatever it is up that you need, but don't lose your chance because this is what we've all been fighting for, is to no
Mhm.
more children in Scientology. I mean, this would be so groundbreaking if they had a conviction for child trafficking. Wow. I mean, I think that would be the beginning or the ending of, I mean, that would be the beginning of the end, so let's say, of children in Scientology at that point,
Yeah.
and so keep fighting. And thank you,
And it
Mona.
did
Mona, you work so hard to get all this. Like, people don't realize she's been working on this for so long. And I know she's all very excited that she could finally present it. She's been wanting to do this for a long time, but you got to kind of build it up and get it to where you are confident that, we can move forward to the next steps. So there's a reason that, and not to give, we don't want to give OSA or any of them a heads up before they need to hear about it, because they're going to try to intervene. And the fight's not going to be with the government. It's going to be with them trying to safe point the government. So sometimes you have to wait. And I know that was hard for her, but thank you, Mona, for all the hard work. It's
Oh, you're
outstanding.
welcome. Thanks for joining me at last minute. I'm sorry, Audit, that I didn't have all this scheduled, and I'm sorry. But
No,
thank
nothing to
you
be
for
sorry
joining
for.
me. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, I'm glad I was here. I'm sorry for the planes.
That's okay.
That's what happens when
So
you live under
we
an
do need
airport.
to we do need to push this out. I'm trying to write a little report for Tony Ortega, and then I would like to see it get to the Aftermath and to the SPTV Foundation. And let's get this out and make sure that people know that they need to report, they need to file a crime report. All they need to do is hand that article or send it in if they do it online. You don't have to necessarily go there. You don't have to face them face to face. You can call, but have that article so that way they can see it's already been done. Its case has already gone through, and it'll make it quicker. The UNOI case went, what, 3 years? It took 3, 4 years, but a lot of that legwork is done for this one. They have a model to look after. Yeah,
They won't know what hit them. I mean, imagine if you had 100 people that, it's huge. And the fact that they're still, if they're trying to say, well, there's no children in these buildings doing all this stuff, whatever, it's not just for children. You cannot tell me that it's okay for that man to be whatever he's doing, polishing the street or vacuuming, whatever it is he's doing. That's labor trafficking. And once you're working on a street, a public street, they have to be paid minimum wage. And also, there's also another little bit of precedent, because with their studios, that was also the problem. The people who were doing their videos and as extras or cast members or whatever, they were getting paid org wages, and somebody fought for them. I guess it was probably the unions. I'm not exactly sure, but they stepped up, and now the people who work on their production, they had to pay full wages. So they do
right,
get paid full wages, but it took somebody fighting for them. And so here too, like the people working on the street, people doing all this stuff, that they, maybe a union will fight for them too. But here, this is a really great way to fight for yourself, and then for everyone else, that this never happens again to anyone.
right. And this is unlike the other cases, unlike going to the chief of police or going through LAPD, which that is still somewhere we need to go. But unlike that, the TVPA goes all the way back to 2000, which is a huge deal. You're not having to fight from 2009 and figure out whether you have the right color socks to make sure that you're eligible and qualified. This fact says if you were coerced and into forced labor from the year 2000, you are eligible.
I think a lot of
That's
people are going to fall in that category, I believe, a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah. So I encourage people to have the courage. I encourage people to have the brevity and the want to do this for justice for themselves and to encourage and affect change. So that is my hope with this. And I know those that don't push this out, if they don't push this out, they must not want change because this is something that could make the change probably almost immediate. It's good. I mean, it'll take a little while to make it go through, but once there's a couple of cases filed, it's going to be on the radar. It's going to be a change.
And another good thing is this, like, kind of like learning Scientology's tactics. They always are on the offense and they want everybody on the defense. This reverses it for them. And they're not really good at that. They're not good at being on the defensive, when they're not hitting first. So I think it's good to do that and put them, now they're going to be defending all these different things from every angle, and I
Hmm.
think that's really powerful. We'll see how Mr. Kendrick Moxon handles all these things coming at them.
Little OCD on that Kendrick
I
Moxon
know. Well,
audit.
I'm still bitter about the emails he sent, the slanderous emails. So we're not going to forget that, Mr. Moxon. It's on.
Oh,
I'm more
goodness.
motivated than ever.
I didn't see any other questions there. Did I miss any questions? If you have any questions, if you hand this out to anybody and they have a question, please do Haggis put our emails in there. I would be more than happy to respond to any emails.
And
Um,
please, 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 to the big channels, please. And I just want to say, for whatever differences that anyone or everyone has, there can be a point in time, even that there could just be a moment, like in this area, where there's a truce enough that we can all just work to get justice for, because it's what we all are in this for, right? Like, supposedly we're all in this for no more kids in Scientology and justice for those who went through it. So everyone, that I'm just going to say, like, we should all just, for whatever reason, on this put everybody, push it out. Everybody just, let's get this help. This would be life changing for so many people, because if they got these convictions, they would not be allowed. I mean, I'm telling you, it would probably change the Sea Org overnight. They're not going to. I doubt they'll get away with doing $47 a week anymore. So much will change, but so we all got to push for all of this.
Cajun, the civil rights case will be against both Sciento and LAPD, depending on the situation. Yeah. So it depends. A case by case. The civil rights is case by case, and the criminal one is not case by case, but it's because of the different cases that they do the overall criminal case.
And that's only going to be against Scientology, not against LAPD.
Correct. That'll be against Scientology, RTC, CSI, COS, all the alphabets. Probably throw in Narcanon and Abel and all the rest of them just for the hell of it, since
And
um,
all of them personally,
and all the
and
personal ones. Yes.
And you know what? I mean, Serge has often mentioned about something, how many parents have trafficked their kids. It may be that, that it could lead to that, if they were, wanted to pursue that. Not that it
Yeah.
has to.
It could be though. Yeah.
Just whoever was doing it. Some may have had it worse than others. Some parents may have been. I'm not an expert that they could be worse than others, but it would also probably be everybody who, from maybe Janet to like whoever up and down the line, whoever's doing this, and even there's such a thing as being a co-conspirator. Like if they're not giving the order, but they're seeing abuse and not doing anything about it because they're mandated reporters. If they're ministers, they are mandated reporters. So if they're watching child abuse and not reporting it.
Yep. This all ties in with the camera and with all of it. It really does. It really
Yeah,
does.
there might be one big final push, and then then we'll get with the IRS and knock that out. Um,
Yep.
Things will
It's it'll
change.
all yep, it'll all roll uphill to that. Definitely so.
Right, and if there's still Scientology, whatever, but it's not going to be able to be abusive and slavery and all these then trafficking. All that's gonna have to stop. So it'll look very different if they do are able to maintain Scientology after that, in my opinion.
Yep. Kathy says like Kelly Copter being called an SP at 7 years old. Yeah, that's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous sauce. So
Well,
with
and
that,
also Laura, I mean, like Moxon had to call her sir. What does
yeah,
that do to a child? Like it's just she was what 14, 15 years old, and this big lawyer, whatever he's calling her sir, and it's
right.
a lot of
Well, and you
damage.
read through that UNOI claim of having to call, certain people certain names, and it's all mind control. It's all manipulation.
Yep.
Yeah, auditing NPRF is child abuse,
Yes.
100% old Fritz.
That's human
Absolutely.
abuse. Like the purification's abuse. Period.
It is
The-
abuse. And that would be part of it. I think they would probably bring, as I said, the labor charges in as the Trojan horse. And then all of
Mhm.
these other abuses we would be able to start bringing in Purif. We start bringing in the e-meter, start bringing in the different things that are abusive.
Yeah, the e-meters, electrical currents constantly, and who know? I mean, I think it's just so much. It's just the level of abuse that, and as you start, and you look back and you really, start looking at what L. Ron Hubbard said and did, and it was built on abuse, in my opinion.
Hmm. Well, that's one of the things that we'll be rolling up too is proving that the doctrine, policy, and practices are abusive in their own nature. So then you add on the SA, the child abuse, all the additional factors on top of that, uh, undue prosecution, um, jail, and all of that. Add all of
Yeah.
that in too.
False
It's
imprisonment of the
false
without
imprisonment.
without
Yeah.
due process. There's so much, and that would be convictions and any kind of judgments in any of this would go a long way, not only in justice but in ending this stuff, like ending it
Yep.
forever.
So, but getting it on the table, kidnapping, yeah, kidnapping.
Yes.
Getting it on the table right now is really important. We have to get the cases started with no victim, no crime, no reporting, nobody knows. If it's not reported, it didn't happen.
Right. Well, it did, but it didn't. Right, it's one of those
Right.
things. It
Well,
did, but it didn't.
in
In
the
the eyes
eyes
of
of
the
the law
law.
enforcement, it didn't happen
Right.
because it's just allegations.
And they can't work on that. They can't, because like police react to, they can't, they're not really preventative in nature. I mean, they have like crime suppression and stuff, but they can't say, oh, we're hearing all these people talking about what's going on in Big Blue, so we're just going to go and get a search warrant and go break down the door because a bunch of people are talking at a meeting about what's going on here. It just does not work like that. They
Mm-mm,
have
it
to have a
doesn't.
report. They have to have like a crime and a victim. Even if they don't have the victim yet, there has to be real evidence that they're not going to just act on, if you call and say, like, I saw something, whatever. Sometimes, it could be that just a witness it just as a witness, you can do something, but really they have to have a crime to be able to go to prosecution. They can maybe go take a look and see what's going on without it, but they're not going to get anywhere without the victim somewhere. There has to be a victim.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Good morning, Miriam. Thanks for waking up at 3 a.m. for us.
Oh,
We're getting ready to
Muriel's
close up here.
that's the middle of the night. That's not good morning. That's middle of the night.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
super.
So, are there any more questions for now? We're going to give it a second or two as we wrap it up. And if not, again, please push this out. I will put in a separate post the 6 steps that the FBI gave me. So that way you can just forward those. It would help if there was a little bit of, I guess, explanation to what those 6 steps are. These docs are on the description. I don't know how I do the PowerPoint. That I don't know, but I'm going to put the 6 steps. I'll copy and paste that. Haggis. I don't know how to get the PowerPoint itself on, but I will do the 6 steps that the FBI gave me. Thank you, Haggis, for asking that question. Okay, any closing thoughts on it?
Just, well, the bonus would be to do both, try to get the civil and the criminal, because then the Marcy's law kicks in. So you'll have, if you get through the civil and they're taking your case, then when you're doing this, you'll have that extra help from an attorney to help lead and guide and advocate. So there's the bonus in doing both at the same time. And just,
If I send you this, PowerPoint, would you send it out as a Google Doc?
for me,
Yeah.
whatever you need. I'm going to
No,
share the video and whatever you need. It's like, me, I'm not the
no,
most
would you?
techy person. If I need help, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I will.
You're used to
Happy.
doing that part of it. Okay, we got that covered, you guys. Okay,
Absolutely.
well, closing thoughts. Thank you so much, you guys.
Yes,
And
thank you.
I think I'm going to take a little bit of the weekend to myself and enjoy some quiet time. So thank you much, and we will see you later.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you, Mona. Thank you for doing all this, and thank you for having me on. And
Oh,
it's
no,
exciting.
thank you.